the information I was hearing in the public was conflicting and disagreeing with the information that I was reading. So I was saying, like, what is this all about? So, when a person feels or notices that their physical, their mental, and their spiritual, bodies are, have been violated. Okay. And in some cases, it's been their whole life. That was a huge wake up call for me. Personally, that's the journey of why is this happening, And I started looking into these conflicts in the world of, why all this chaos was being allowed and, why was it being started in the first place? And, it was something that was never really talked about in any class or education that I learned anywhere. So when anytime I would ask anybody about it, they would just say, well, that's the old, that's the way it's always been. So, if you take the word violate and, it's a lot like the word violence, right? Um, so what does it mean? So when you break it down in Latin, it means violare, okay, and that's how you pronounce it. And it means to treat with violence, dishonor, or outrage. And to be violated, no one has that right to do that. That's all there is.
Hello, hello. This is Chris Jansen. Welcome to the End Evil podcast. The End Evil podcast is dedicated to ending evil whenever and wherever possible. Evil, as described in the book by Jeremy Locke, The End of All Evil, evil is the destruction of freedom. And one thing I love to do is speak with other content creators and other people that are doing art and speaking out and working towards freedom and working towards the betterment of humanity as I see it for all people. And today I'm really excited to have Indica Martin here with me. She's an awesome person that has really done a lot to help children and young people and encourage with her book and her work. Thanks so much for coming today, Indica. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, Chris. Thank you so much for having me on today. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, just your wonderful smile and your point of view, optimistic point of view. It was great having you in the funnel conference and sharing your words there. I really appreciated that. That was quite an event to be part of. It was exciting.
It really was. I was very impressed by everything. It had some wonderful speakers on it, and I was so blessed to be a part of that. So it's a lot of fun to create what I did and to see the other content creators, do what they put together. It was awesome.
Yeah, and I think many of us all these years have been following, various content creators. Like a lot of us share in common of following Mark Passio's work that has inspired us, and then little by little, I see this community growing of people that care about things, natural law, that care about freedom and truth. And it's really cool to see the networking starting to happen and seeing people working on it in different ways. Right now, Corey Enderlat is doing the End of Slavery Summit, and I'm getting his emails every day, and it's exciting seeing all those new videos. So a lot of good things happening. And so, I just kind of think it'd be cool to get to know you a little better. And so I thought I'd start by just asking you a little bit about this one thing I'm curious from everybody, because we're always trying to reach out to other people. It's like, what got you going? What woke you up? What on your personal journey, kind of spurred you to want to write a book or be a speaker or talk about these things?
Absolutely, that's going to be a big answer, because it took many years to get to that point. You know, I think that one thing that really took me over to that edge was hearing this is going to be a little different. Okay. I was starting to read about natural remedies and natural cures and, that were being used for serious illnesses in the world. And, you know, this was something that I wasn't very comfortable talking about. Okay. Uh, I thought everybody was wanting everybody to be healthy, right? And, if it wasn't healthy for people to consume, um, then the word would get out and then it wouldn't be available, if it was hurting people. So when I did some research and I read some people's blogs and stories, and it started conflicting with what I was hearing. And this started me on my journey many years ago. And the information I was hearing in the public was conflicting and disagreeing with the information that I was reading. So I was saying, like, what is this all about? So, when a person feels or notices that their physical, their mental, and their spiritual, bodies are, have been violated. Okay. And in some cases, it's been their whole life. That was a huge wake up call for me. Personally, that's the journey of why is this happening, And I started looking into these conflicts in the world of, why all this chaos was being allowed, and, why was it being started in the first place? And, it was something that was never really talked about in any class or education that I learned anywhere. So when anytime I would ask anybody about it, they would just say, well, that's the old, that's the way it's always been. So, if you take the word violate and, it's a lot like the word violence, right? Um, so what does it mean? So when you break it down in Latin, it means violare, okay, and that's how you pronounce it. And it means to treat with violence, dishonor, or outrage. And to be violated, no one has that right to do that. That's all there is to it. It's just completely 100% wrong. And as a human being, you wonder why is this happening? And some people would, see other people getting violated and they would just turn the other way, like they don't see what's really going on here, and they would ignore what was going on. And, when people treat each other like that and they harm each other, and, when people don't comply with other people, um, what happens is that they have that fear in them that that they kind of just give in. They go along to get along. They don't know what they're doing. Oh, somebody told me to do this, so I did it, and I really didn't think about the consequences. So I just think it's a big manipulation to get people to do things, and that was a big wake up call for me personally. Uh, and to see how some people could do that type of manipulation and get away with it. Like, why is this group over here not allowed to do it, but this group over here is allowed to do it? So it's a big psychological manipulation on a large scale, controlling a population to get them to do what they want them to do. And I always was questioning that. And a lot of people were like, why are you questioning that? Why can't you just do it? Well, I don't want to be ignorant. I don't want to ignore the suffering. Um,
You like to think for
so,
yourself?
therefore, yes, I like to have independent thought. And when you do have independent thought, they tend to, make fun of you and make you feel like an outcast, or they talk about you behind your back. And um and people get embarrassed, so that's why people do what they do, is because they just don't want to get embarrassed, or oh, he's over there doing that, or she's not over there doing that. And you know what, you have to give up what people think about you. And so that's what I did. I don't care what anybody, I do care, but on that kind of scale I don't. So that was some big topics there that got me to start caring.
That's interesting now that here we are in the COVID era, the pandemic era, and you were saying that for you it was like one of the breakthroughs was alternative healing, and then here we've come back around to where you're like, yeah, I told you guys about this, but years and years ago, I've had a similar thing. Like for years, I haven't felt like I really appreciate the medical system in a lot of ways, but I never really questioned it until my own personal health things. I had some issues, and then I tried to deal with them somewhat the traditional way, with some resistance on my end, of course, but then realizing like their system is totally wacky, it just doesn't even work or make sense. And then I went at those same problems with my own strategies and my own research and found solutions that worked. And they're totally in
Mhm.
opposition to what you would hear in, the mainstream. So, this stuff sinking in for
Absolutely.
you, I imagine you've probably learned to take more responsibility for your own health choices outside of the medical system from that, correct?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
awesome.
I always do
Yeah.
research.
Yeah.
I always do research. And, one other big wake up call, many years ago, I went to the doctor and I said, I'm using this natural remedy
Mhm.
to her, the doctor. And she didn't like that. And I just thought, well, it's helping me. So what's the problem if it's helping me? Well, that's just not something that we can, recommend. And that's where the questions are. Why can't you recommend it?
If it
Well,
works, would you want me to feel better? Isn't that the goal here?
that that is the goal. Yes. So that's the conflicting types of situations that don't add up for me. Mm.
Right. Yeah, and that not adding up is kind of what, for those of us with inquiring minds, like you said, we run into something. For you, it was the health issues and or the, medical system or, alternative health. And then you start looking deep. You're like, well, if this doesn't make sense, why doesn't this make sense? And then, off it goes, what they call the rabbit hole, right? We keep bumping into more things the
Yeah.
more we look. And pretty soon it can be somewhat devastating to really recognize the extent of the problems. And I'm sure you've had to go through some of that. And I would guess that coming through that on the other side of what kind of inspired you, what am I going to do about this? Because I went on SNS is your book, your wonderful book for children, and how that
Thank you.
came about. And I'm guessing that part of that process was coming to these realizations, being depressed about it, and then being like, I want to do something positive, right? Am I right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Give to nature and
Yeah.
nature will give to you. Tell us a little bit of how it came about.
Yeah. So, geez, that's such a big story. I, one day I was looking very hard into my soul. And what I found is that I wanted children and parents to have that relationship, um, to be able to talk about deep topics at a very young age. Um, something that I wanted as a child. And I wanted kids to learn these inherent laws of nature, and how these energies were directly affected by behavior. So this is a very deep topic. And, you know, the laws of nature are, let's see, there's mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, and gender. And, you know, these need to be very deeply understood and cared for, right? So I think that the more people are connected to these types of energies, the more that they know that they're very powerful forces in nature. So, you know, this information was not taught to me at a very young age, and I didn't want any kids to go through what I went through. I went through life with blinders on. I had no clue. I was very gullible. Whatever you told me, I believed. That quickly changed. Okay. Uh, but it was much later in life. So all those years, I was like, just happily trying to, be positive and, just hoping that everything is okay and that, we're being looked after by the creator and, nothing bad should be happening here. We're all evolving hopefully as a species. And, I think that, a lot of kids just don't have these independent thoughts or behaviors. They kind of just, kind of watch that square thing screen, and They watch many different programming, type of shows, and it has many subliminal messages in it that we are not aware of. And I wanted to kind of give kids that foundation of these nature's laws. So, needless to say, my journey became writing a book about, what I missed as a child. And I wanted to have it be very fun and interactive between the adult and the child, and hopefully teach the adults some things that they didn't learn, as a child. I think that 3 years old, 4 years old, right when they're learning to talk, is a great time to learn these types of energies because it builds that foundation of knowledge, uh, with that child. They feel connected to nature. I never felt that way, at all. I felt very disconnected. So, you know, Chris, I never wrote a book before. I didn't know what I was doing. I had a calling, and it was very real. It was just like, boom, uh, you know, th this idea came in my head, and I said, "I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna write about this." And this was my opportunity to learn the steps of how to self-publish. And, I got some really great creative people involved. That's what, one needs to do if they're gonna self-publish is you wanna get some good people around you that can do things better than you, so you make a good team. I had the ideas, I knew what I wanted, I knew what I did, and I had some great artists and great help and support from many different people. Uh, so basically, I just wanted to give that to kids. And one of the biggest challenges I will tell you um, is getting this information in like a library. Okay, and you
Mhm.
think, oh well, if I want to, do a book and get it in a library, I should be able to do that. No,
Not so easy, huh?
no, not so easy. And I can see if they want to look at it, judge it, and see, if there's anything in there that would hurt somebody or be inappropriate.
Mhm.
But there's nothing in there that's inappropriate.
Absolutely not.
And yeah, so it's political, and it's controlled. It's controlled information of what goes in there. So I also created this book, during the shutdown. I created it in digital format for French, Spanish, and Italian. And I did that because I was kind of guided to do that through my spirit, through my soul. I don't know why, I just did it. Obviously, there are reasons, and, but yeah, I wanted to reach as many kids as possible. So it's extremely difficult to get in front of these groups of people that speak this language, these three languages, because we've all been separated on this planet. It's you know it's it's gotten a lot better in the past 20, 30 years with the internet, but it's still not quite where it needs to be. And so, I would love to. It's on Amazon. If anybody speaks French, Spanish, or Italian, and they want to show this on their iPad or their tablet to a child, my goal is to get this in a hardback book someday and kind of, spread the news all over the world. And uh, I didn't find, by the way, I wanted to tell you that I looked everywhere for a book on this topic, on the laws of nature. S- there was not one
It's mind blowing.
anywhere. So it
I
is
mean,
mind blowing.
it's like
I
the
don't know
tools,
why. It's just
like
go
makes
ahead.
me think of the tools. I think a lot about tools because I spent most of my life as a carpenter and I'm a tradesperson, and it's like there's certain tools you need to make other tools. And this is one of those tools, like you're saying, if you give it to someone early on, then they can use that tool in their mind to then build upon with the other tools that come from these fundamental first principle type tools of understanding these, hermetic principle type concepts that these are, the basis of reality. Everything else builds off of that. And unluckily for most of us, we never got that. Like I've often pointed out to people, the term natural law was never, I never even heard it until I was close to 30 years old. And it's like, that's like, the whole idea had to then sprout from there. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. And then, I was able to really come a long way with it. But imagine if someone gave me that information when I was 3 or 4, sitting on their knee reading from a book, and like
Mhm.
the trivium, they never taught us that in school. They never even mentioned it. The first time I heard about it was on an anarchist podcast when I was like close to 30 years old. Same thing, or in my 30s, late 30s. So yeah, I think what you've really done here is created the possibility that many children could be exposed to these concepts and these ideas and have the tools to build upon from there. And that's like, you're just offering them a whole world of possibilities that otherwise they just don't know about because no one told them. I think one of the things my dad gave me was he goes, question things, even question what I say. And that was really stuck in my head and allowed me to learn and process some of the things where, I'm able to speak on now. So I think that's huge. How long did you say it took you from the time when you kind of had the idea and started working on it to when you were actually finishing the book and getting it published?
From beginning to end, it took 4 years.
Wow,
Now
what a project.
that was that was working full time,
While
at a
you're doing your full-time
what
job, this is on the
that's
side. And
that's correct. And
mm.
I had to work with the artist schedules, what they were doing, you know, and they had to take
And you're
breaks.
using
They
your own
try
money to hire people too, huh?
right, right.
You
So it's a
invested in this.
love. It's the love of what I'm doing. Yes, that's correct. So
Wow.
it's
Yeah,
an
that really
investment
shows a
in the
lot of
children.
commitment and willpower to push through all those challenges and to make that happen. It's a beautiful thing. And it's something
Thank
many
you.
people are lacking, that follow through. I don't know, so many of us want to write a book and haven't quite got there yet. I'm among us, you know. But so it's
Well,
inspiring.
you can do it. Everybody wants to do it. I know that. There's a lot of
Yeah.
people they want to write their own book.
Right. Right.
And just got to stay focused and, you know, make a plan,
Absolutely, right, and follow through. I mean, for me, what
follow
I am able
through.
to do is the show and the podcast, and I don't think people realize just how much work goes into these things. When you're, especially like you're saying, working full time, maybe you have your own family and children, and then you're trying to find extra time in the evenings and on the weekends to do this service to humankind, and wanting to do more of it even. And it's a lot to do. And so I think it's very commendable.
Well, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it.
So, this show, I call my show End Evil. And I think it's,
Yeah.
to
It's a
me,
great
it's a
show.
good topic because it's like, I think the word itself is misconstrued, just like God. When I grew up, it's like I was saying, I grew up in church where they defined God in a particular way. It wasn't until years later when someone said, "Oh, natural law," and I'm like, "Oh, that's a different way to think about it." It's kind of the same thing with evil. I think evil is presented to us in a silly way in Disney movies and religions, but I think there's a lot more to it. So I'd be curious to see from your point of view, what does it mean to you when I say evil or ending evil? Is that even possible?
Well, I would say that, the more that evil gets exposed, which it is getting exposed more every day, it's just too slow for me. I want everything to pour in and just bring it all in and just rip the band-aid off. That's what I want. However, it's probably not going to happen that way. Um, the more it's exposed on a grand scale, and I'm going to hope that it's going to be. The more people can't stay in denial anymore. Uh, Maybe the healing can start to begin, and that will be very beautiful if I can see that. Evil seems to it's always going to look for opportunities to get into people's psyche without them knowing it. And our free will allows us to choose between good and evil, and this is very elementary to me. It's always been very elementary to me. But some people do not care about the suffering that evil is doing, or that it's through us. and what is taking place right this second, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. On the other hand, when somebody allows, when somebody gives in to allowing the suffering to continue, I think that our intuition knows it's wrong. They just do. They may not be able to talk about it. So in reality, nobody really gets by with doing any wrongdoing. You know, um, I think that it's like you said, it's a way for. It's kind of like it's an experience here. We are going through this life as an experience, like an experience, and we're here to learn these values, morality, nature's laws, and what we decide to do, and how we either turn the cheek or ignore what's going on. I think those are the things that our creator's looking at, and it's not a good idea to ignore any type of suffering. It's like people are like, oh, I can't do anything about that. All these kids over here, they're being taught this subject over here in school, and it's disgusting. I can't do anything about that. People feel very powerless, and they don't like to be embarrassed. Like I said before, they don't want the attention on them, and they're so embarrassed that they feel like they really want to be a part of the group. And if let's say that a parent wants to start something at a school, then they're afraid or they fear that it's those teachers or that the people there that run the school are going to make it hard for their child because their parent is causing some you know conflicting, opinions about what they do in their class and what they're taught at school, or what their kids are having to live through, or what they're having to eat at their school. You know, there's all these parents that don't like what's going on, but they don't really want to do anything about it. They just want to keep going along to get along. And finally, you just come to that point where you're like, enough is enough. You can't let it continue. That's what we're all being taught here. I think what we tolerate, what we put up with, this is very important that we stand up for ourselves as a species and for our children, especially because they're innocent. They have to do exactly what you tell them to do. If you tell a child, you got to go here to this office and get this done, you're going to do it because you trust your parents. Some parents don't care, and some parents do. And there's consequences. And, it's not something that I would want to be a part of, not the negative consequences. So, there has to be a lot of love involved. I think that evil too. You've all heard of the Milgram. Have you heard of the Milgram
Oh,
experiment?
absolutely.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, sure. And I learned about that just probably 6 years ago. I was like, "What's this? This is really wild." So in 1963, I believe, Professor Milgram, and he was a Yale professor. He decided to, um, put out an ad in the paper and pay these people like $4 and something per hour, uh, to come in for an hour, and it was an experiment on what people or how people would be obedient, um, if they were causing suffering. Would they continue to do it if they were told to, even though they were watching the suffering and hearing the suffering? Could they continue to do it? And not everybody, but most of them did it.
Overwhelmingly
And
majority, and those
for
tests have
for
been
four
done
dollars
since.
for
And
four
again, the
dollars
same
and
thing.
right, for $4 and some cents an hour. These people, they oh I'm going to go to Yale University and I'm going to do this experiment with this professor. He's got so much more education than I do. I'm going to really respect him and I'm going to do what he tells me to do. And, uh, and the experiment really worked to show that people will do just about anything.
Basically, people
Uh,
were electrocuting someone in the next room. It turns out they weren't really, but they thought they were.
Right,
And they were willing
right.
to, if this doctor in their ear is saying, oh, turn the electricity on, the person got the question wrong, someone answered the question wrong, you were going to zap them. And even to the point where it sounds like in their headphones that the person they're zapping is screaming, having a heart attack, and they would continue to do it as long as the doctor would prompt them to say, yep, keep doing it. And I think there was only one person in that first experiment out of 30 or 40 that really, really said, no, absolutely not. And then there's been multiple other iterations of the same experiment done, and the same thing happens. And what
Mhm.
I've heard interesting in one iteration is when you put different people in the room and there's not someone urging that person, or somebody else says, you know what, I don't want to be part of this, and walks out, then people will start to come around and be like, this isn't right. But if there's a person in authority there telling them, no, this is what you're supposed to do, people will do it almost always. And the majority of people will, which to me shows how much we're conditioned. And you've already hinted to a lot of the things that cause the conditioning in our society, our educational system, some of our religious, there's good sides of some of the religious institutions, but the negative sides, I think, outweigh, because it convinces people that you should always bow to authority, that you should believe stories that you're told and do them without, really analyzing them carefully. And so many of these institutions and ways things are done in society mask what evil really is. And when you really get down to the core of it, it's taken away someone's ability to choose, to say, no, I don't want to do that.
Imagine
And
that.
training people that you should do that. And that's an thing to do, to have people that have power over other people and that can tell them, you better do this or else. And we accept that. We accept that in our military, our police, our systems of political power. And it's like, without that thinking embedded somewhere in your head that, well, it's important to think for yourself. Instead, we're getting that thinking embedded in people that always do as you're told. That's basically the main message of school, which to me, I was very traumatized by it. So,
Mm.
you said quite a few things there that really brought me back to my childhood. And that's why I was getting excited there to, I think ultimately we can't, though. I mean, like, we can't just come out and stop all this stuff all at once. Like, if I could, I would, but I can't go out and just
Sure you
start,
would.
destroying things and shooting people or whatever. Those things aren't going to teach future generations the right way to be. Although the self-defense aspect is extremely important, what I really wind up talking about the most in this podcast is the personal growth aspect and what we can do within ourselves, because I think we set a better example for others, and they might actually want to listen to us. Whereas a lot of times in the past, I've tried to tell people, this is the way it is, this is what I realized, and you get a lot of resistance because people feel like you're talking down to them. But when I'm working on myself and say, well,
Right.
here's what I'm doing, here's what I've tried to change about my life, I feel like that gives a little more opportunity for others to learn. And that's one reason I love so much your work, because you really thought that out. Well, who could I affect the most? Well, children. How could I affect them most? Well, give them some creative writing that is embedded with tools that will help them get through life. And that's just fantastic. And so I'd like to hear a little bit about your opinion on self growth and working on ourselves to create change in the world.
Yes, and I appreciate that. And then also, I would encourage anybody to look into the YouTube videos of the Milgram experiment. They've got little 5-minute videos, and they are very educational. I think that as far as self growth is concerned, first, I think one needs to care um, if they want self growth. If care is not present, they are not going to work on self growth at all. Um, They are going to continue the same day to day, you know, activities and become stagnant instead of being in that growth mode. So if one does care, I think, they will continue to research for the answers, and keep looking, because that's the key. Is that, I always wanted to know the answers and I could never get the answers from any adult in my life. So people tend to give up. They just give up, and they read one thing and they think, oh, I found the answer. And, I don't have to work and research anymore. So, it takes persistence, it takes perseverance, and takes a lot of patience, because you're going to have to take a lot of time of your personal time, that you maybe used to watch TV, maybe you used to play games, maybe you used to do other things with your personal time. But if you start looking into these topics that we're talking about today, um, you'll find some answers. But you need to care. You need to have that care. It's not going to come quickly at all, I think. But at the same time, I want to encourage people. It's definitely something. I did it much later in life, and I'm encouraging people to do it much earlier in life than I did. I started doing it probably 8 years ago, 7 years, maybe, yeah, 7 or 8 years ago. I mean, so all of my life I had blinders on. I had a really good idea about things, but I was so confused. I couldn't find any answers. The internet really helped in listening to podcasts and reading and talking to people. So, I would encourage everybody, w- once you find something that is interest, like mine was natural remedies, research and read and, learn and watch and verify it, keep reading into it, and then it takes you on to another path, and then takes you down a little bit of that rabbit hole, and then it'll take you somewhere else. Everything goes down another path. So, it's important to start with what's important to you. So, um, it's not a matter of advising anybody. It's a matter of just encouraging. And we all want to learn. And we all want to. I would encourage to learn consciousness, because that is the basis of understanding what's going on in your mind, your body, and your spirit, and in the communities that we live in and the world that we live in. I think unless you become real conscious of that and aware, of what's going on, that is the key, because you're not just going to go through life with blinders on anymore. You're going to be thinking about how your behavior affects the aggregate, how your behavior affects your soul, and your neighbor's soul, and your community's soul. Um, you know and what people don't really understand is how it affects everyone. Everyone's behavior affects everyone. um, so, this is the talk about morality. So we have to encourage each other, to do the right thing, and always do that. So, it's just like with that experiment we were just talking about, the Milgram experiment. No matter what somebody tries to get you to do, always try to do the right thing. If it's going to hurt or harm, it's probably not a good idea. And that goes for any kind of, mental type of abuse, or physical, or any type of thing that you could do to yourself or someone else could do to you. There's all kinds of things that are happening to us, um, at every moment. We're bombarded by so many things, with food, water, this, that, and the other thing. I could go on and on and on. And people, I will get in groups with people, and they won't even question it. They will not question things, and then they think I'm really funny because I question everything, and then they start laughing at me. And people do not want to be embarrassed. They want to listen to what they were told. They want some kind of figure to tell them how to feel, think, and act. And that's where the independent thought was lost. And that's where I tried to bring it back with the foundation of the natural laws being taught at a very young age. I think that we are taught to respect. We need to respect authority. We need to respect our teachers and our these people in our lives that we grew up with, and we don't. If we question them or ask some questions, why is it this way? Why is it that way? Then the teacher or there's somebody would get aggravated with us, and we always, um, you know. But anyway, it goes a long way, but the manipulation is is beyond anything of what's happening. And we need to not get used to it any longer. It's not acceptable. So,
Yeah, and like you've pointed out, like the easy path is always for sale. It's being advertised, it's being sold, and I think there is a natural tendency in the human to like survival, to get along with the
mhm.
herd, basically, to not stand out
Right,
because, if it seems like that's dangerous, right? It causes fear. If you're different, if you're outside of the herd, you're the one that's going to get picked off. If everybody's laughing at you, you're the one that's going to get attacked or singled out. And so, I think there is a natural tendency to kind of blend in and to fit in. And I understand that and I recognize it. And it's
mhm.
important, I think, to say anyone who's going down the path of self work, it's dangerous business, But I've often thought of the allegory of climbing a mountain. If you decide I'm going to
Right,
climb a mountain, there's going to be some parts on that journey that you're not going to be comfortable. It's going to be
right.
tricky. But in order to reach that exhilaration of making it to the top and what you learn from doing that, you have to go through those tricky times. And this path that we've been on is not easy. There's going to be some depression, there's going to be some anxiety, you have to go through these stages. But what on the other end of it, I think you can say there's a lot of benefit, right? To have done that hard work and have pushed yourself through these things. Now you got a book you published. Now you feel good about yourself for sharing something with children that might actually change people's lives, that will, I'm sure will, any child that's exposed to your work, for instance. So, I think it goes a long way. To me, the interesting thing, the one last kind of topic I want to bring up for you to talk about a couple minutes, is the discipline aspect of that. Because on the one hand, we're saying here, authority, not good. Authority is people telling other people, here's what you have to do, But there is this aspect of discipline that comes into play when we're doing our self work and when we're working with children, where if we don't have any discipline and respect, we lose the ability to teach how to respect each other's boundaries and even respecting our own boundary. One of my biggest hurdles has been disciplining myself so I can actually get things done, like whether it's write a
Yeah,
little book
right,
every day or do a little exercise so I'm in good enough shape to do my podcast. And so
right.
I'm just curious your thoughts on discipline, self discipline, and in the self and then in relation to children, either way you want to go with it or both.
Sure. I It's a great question. So what has really helped me was giving my time and attention to what matters. And it's kind of like switching gears, in a car instead of being in neutral. So you're going to the first and second and third and fourth, and then yeah. So it's anything like you do. You get up and brush your teeth. I mean, that's discipline, right? You're trying to take care of yourself. If and as far as what people do and activities that what kids do with their parents, you know, the time and attention that parents give to their children is a discipline that if I had to do it over again, I would have done more of it. Um, I did a lot of great good things, and I wasted a lot of time. I wasted a lot of time in my life. Um, I think that I would have done a better job teaching the morals and values at a younger age. Um, but I think that it takes it takes that labor of love. You have to love what you do, and the discipline will come. Okay, you either want to take care of yourself physically, mentally, spiritually, or you don't think it's important. Okay, it has to be you know that labor of love. Like I said, um, I think that you know I think I must have did something pretty okay in my past life because I've always had that urge to try to do the right thing. I'm not perfect at all. I never have been perfect, and I don't think perfection is the goal. I think the goal is to do the right thing, and it's not like I'm working for the soul of the earth. I'm working for the soul of the children. Somebody has to stand up to for them. And a lot of people do stand up for the children in many different ways. But I think that it's about taking my time and going to, like you said, it's like climbing the mountain. Each step, you're climbing higher and higher, and then you get to that place where you feel good and you just did something. You completed a task, you completed a project that you worked so hard on, and then you gotta figure out how to get down the mountain. So that's the hardest part is getting down the mountain, I think. Uh, there's a lot of you're going to have to go through some things. So it's always staying disciplined to do the right thing instead of getting sidetracked because every corner you look at, you're being sidetracked. Look over here, do this. You got to think about this now. And oh, this holiday is coming up. So you got to think about this and take your attention away from this over here that what really matters. And then it's all these distractions all the time. So it does take a toll with anybody. I don't care who they are, but some people, they just plow right through and they're very disciplined with anything that they do. They just do everything by the minute. I'm not quite like that. I I do struggle with a little bit of time management, but I try to stay on that path and continue to grow spiritually, mentally, and take care of myself. It's my job to do that. It's why we're here. We're trying to do the best that we can, and I think that that's pretty much it as far as the self discipline is concerned.
Yeah, really. I think I've heard anybody say like you did about coming back down the mountain, and it reminds me of, all these times in life when I've had these big realizations. I'm like, oh, I see the problem. I know it needs to be done. And then
Right,
you gotta stop and think about it. Oh yeah, but that means what do I do? How do I do it? This is gonna take a while. This is gonna be hard. This is a big problem. And that is kind of the coming down the other side of a realization of, we learn and learn and we get passionate about an idea, but then it's like, okay, now I know about it. I mean, just standing here complaining is not going to get us anywhere. Now I got to start working on something and turn this into
right.
proactive. And that's really, I think, where the discipline comes in, where we have to, like you were saying, when you're writing the book, you had to find time on the weeknight or the weekend. And it'd be
That's right.
easy to just keep putting that off, like, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. I'm going to watch Cheers
Believe me, I
tonight or
wanted to.
whatever, you know. But you must have
Yeah,
stopped watching the shows and you stopped doing the other things and you felt passionate about this. So I really like too how you tied that into finding people's passion. Research something that gets you fired up and keep doing that research until it spurs you to the next thing, because you do start to feel um, like a
hmm
train moving at a certain, or an arrow. I like to describe it as an arrow. When you're moving in a direction, you're not so easily distracted or hit by all these things. And the phone, right? Turn the damn thing off, turn the notifications off. You have to find a way if you want to accomplish
that's right.
something. to set aside times, and I think that's important with children too, setting the example for them and kind of instituting that ability in them to discipline themselves. And we're not going to have an honorable society if children don't understand that there are rules or there are consequences to our actions. And that's what we see in the world, is basically all this media is trying to convince you that there aren't consequences,
Hmm.
that there is no such thing as natural law, that there is no such thing as objective morality. And
That's
so,
right.
by showing the principles you have, it helps a young person understand that, there are fundamental first principles in reality, and doesn't matter if you like them or not, they're gonna have their
That's right.
consequence. The law of cause and effect. Where there's going to be a consequence to your actions. So I think we model that, and we encourage others when they see us doing this process. And I mean, I see the joy and the spirit and the passion when you speak, in your eyes and your heart comes out because you've done that work. And I think when we do that, it kind of naturally flows out. So I really appreciate everything you've been saying today. Um, we'll close it up in a few minutes here. Any last thoughts or any things that are popping into your head that you didn't get to say yet?
You know, I would just say that I used to be a TV watcher. I mean, everybody has things that they've done in their life. I was programmed to do that. My mom set me in front of a TV when I was 3 and said, "Sit there and be quiet." That was it. She didn't spend hardly any time with me. That's okay. It's just the way it was. And, you know, it continued, into my life. You know, a lot of time was wasted. And when I did this book, I gave the TV up. I got it out of the the level where, in my house, there are no TVs. No TVs. I don't want them around. I don't think that the programming is a positive thing. And a TV programs the mind. I don't care what anybody says. It happens. It's true. Uh, it takes you down a different path than creativity and using your imagination. And most of all, you're wasting time. I'm not trying to say you're wasting time. I wasted my time, and I don't want to do that anymore. And it's time is very, very precious. Every second, every moment that I can work on myself and try to learn and to really bring that consciousness. Consciousness is the key. I know that it's not my opinion. It is a fact. When you're more conscious, you're on the path. So whatever you're working on and you're conscious of it, you're going the right way. So, with that,
That's
that's
huge.
about it.
I'm kind of getting the
Thank
shivers
you.
right now because I notice that, seriously,
Okay,
like, the
good.
more I'm
It's the that's the
conscious
that's the uni
and
that's
aware,
the universe talking to you.
yeah, you start to
Yeah,
experience the synchronicities and the moments where you're like, oh, this symbolizes this, and it all makes sense. Even though I was upset, this is why that happened. All of a sudden, when you're in that state of mind, you start to see all the connections, or more so.
right,
The more you're
right.
conscious and aware. And then you also ask yourself those questions like, why am I wasting my time watching this right now? This is negative material. Or, why am I indulging in this behavior that's not really working towards what I care about and feel passionate about? So yeah, that's so huge. Thank you so much, Indica. I value your time and I value you. And that's part of what makes this reality so amazing, is that we only get so much time here. And it is precious. I mean, it's super valuable. And, society and TV and all these structures are going to kind of try to devalue the wonder and the beauty of this divine reality that we have, that we are getting to experience consciousness through this physical body and through
Mhm.
this mental, amazing machinery of nature. And so let's make the most of it, folks, and take a good example from Indica, and find your passion and create something and put it in the world that might or positively will affect.
Oh, and by the way, Chris, I want to tell you, if any parents out there, any people that, there is the holiday season coming up. If you want to give a child or you want to spend some time with a child that that they're from ages of 3 to 11, uh, I have a website. It is www.givetonaturebbook.com. That's www.givetonaturebbook.com. And you can go on and order it, and I'll send it wherever you want. Just give me some direction on the notes. And I look forward to seeing how that goes. And I really appreciate the time today, Chris. It's always great to come on and be able to express, how we want to see things in the world and what we're doing with our time and attention. And again, I just thank you very much for your time today.
Wonderful. And I will share that link when I publish this episode. And I'm going to try to make
That's
sure we get
great.
that done in the next week and a half here, because it would be really great to, give that opportunity for some parents. What a great gift, a book that can give your kids the tools for life, So if you're going to go out and buy gifts, there's a good gift to buy, something that will actually make a positive change. So thanks so much, Indica. I really appreciate it. Um,
Absolutely.
we'll have to have another talk in the future, and I hope a lot of people hear this, and I hope a lot of kids get to read your book. Oh, and I have that
Well,
link
thank you
also
so
from
much.
John reading it on the YouTube channel, so I'll share that too, because that was a good thing
Yeah,
he did. Yeah,
that's
it's kind of
great.
fun.
Yeah.
Right on. Thanks so much, Indica. Have a wonderful day, and thanks, listeners, for
You're very
checking us
welcome,
out.
and you do the same. Thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Appreciate it.
Peace.
Hello, this is Chris Jansen. Welcome to the End Evil podcast.
It was a crazy year, 2020. I think everybody kind of was losing their mind one way or another. But if you're listening to this, you made it through.
And they're making mistakes, and people are starting to awake.
There is a science of human freedom.
It's also a spiritual journey.
A person under hypnosis will start to see that there's something wrong. Something is wrong.
It's great that you know what you've come to know, but until there's an outlet for that information and you start creating and putting your creations out into the world to teach other people so that they can become as knowledgeable as you.
Life. What is encouraging life is good. That which takes away from life and growth and creativity is not good.